When I went to music school, we all had to learn how to play piano. And I guess I didn't do it properly, and I ended up developing tendinitis. And the teacher of that class, who is a great musician, he told me to do this stretch right here. And I thought that would help, but, in the long run, that discomfort turned into pain, and things kept getting worse. So I went to a physio, and long story short, I ended up showing them that stretch that my teacher taught me. And they told me that that was actually making it worse. And a little light bulb went off in my head, like, hey, maybe musicians aren't qualified to give medical advice. And now at this point, I know what you're thinking, like, hey, James, you're a musician, and this is a video about hand and wrist health. So you basically just told me not to believe you. And I agree. You shouldn't believe me. And that's why I hired a physiotherapist who has worked with guitar players of all ages. And she has provided me with some warm-ups and exercises that are backed by research and that are safe to do. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. We're going to break this down into two parts. Warm-ups that you do before you practice, and then some cool downs or exercises that you can do after you practice. And these things will help you not only avoid pain and possible injury, but it'll actually make your fingers faster. Now, the first thing that I want to show you today are some basic warm-ups. And you don't have to do too much here. According to Emily, the physiotherapist,
anytime you're putting a joint into a position that it doesn't normally work in on a daily basis, and then putting a lot of pressure into that joint as well could cause irritation in the joint, could cause a little bit of inflammation. And then with guitar too, you're doing a lot of repetitive motions over and over and over. So the joint might be getting irritated, the tendons might also be getting irritated, especially because you might be practicing for a couple hours a day. So I think the big things with that is trying to prevent it from happening in the first place through a proper warm-up. You could be doing passive warm-up, active warm-up. A passive warm-up would be something like applying heat before, or a friend of mine who's a guitarist actually says that she loves to wash her dishes before she actually sits down and practices, because her hands get really nice and warm. You get a lot of blood flow, more circulation. The joints actually produce a little more synovial joint fluid, so they're a little better lubricated. So it's a really good passive way of warming up. And then active would be something like doing some wrist rolling or doing some air playing first, where you're moving your fingers in those positions, but you're not putting the force through the joints.
So that's our warm-up routine, squeezing your fingers and opening them, and just kind of like moving all your different joints. Like I like to think about it like I start with my fingers, then I move up to my wrist, I move into my arm, my elbows, my shoulder, and then a whole body thing, like going for a walk just to get the blood flowing, or even doing the dishes or something that gets your hands moving and gets them warm. The key is getting your hands moving, getting them warmed up, and releasing that synovial fluid that she was talking about before you actually apply force to your joints. Because if you just start playing guitar, you will warm up after about 5 or 10 minutes, but that first 5 or 10 minutes, there was no fluid running through your joints, and it's not as smooth, right? And by the way, all those clips that you saw are from a full interview that we did as part of that guitar health kit I mentioned, which contains warm-ups, exercises, stretches, all the videos, and a booklet. And it's included as a bonus when you sign up with my course, Learn Guitar Once and For All. So if you do want a full routine that covers every bass, things that I just don't have the time to get into in a YouTube video, because it's like over an hour long, I'll make that available down below. Now, once you're warmed up and you start practicing, research shows that you should take a 2-minute break for every 30 minutes of practice.
So even a couple minutes an hour is helpful. That's what research shows, like looking at
2 minutes per hour?
About 2 minutes per hour. But ideally, I would say, like, if you can do 2 minutes every 30 minutes, that would be ideal, for sure.
Okay, and just like set a timer and just stand up, walk around for like 2 minutes, get a glass of water, kind of just, and then sit back down, and that's good enough?
Perfect, yeah, that's great.
Cool.
And then at the end, take 10 minutes to lay flat on your back on the floor with your knees bent and do some of those floor angels.
Now, That's the optimal amount according to science. But from like a learning guitar perspective, I know that students see results from practicing as little as 15 minutes a day. And in the early phases of guitar, you could even break that up into little 5-minute chunks. 5 minutes practicing chord shapes, 5 minutes practicing strumming, and then 5 minutes practicing a song that uses the chords and the strumming and puts them together. And a really big advantage that we have as guitarists is the fact that we can divide our practice into our chord hand and our rhythm hand. So when we work on chords, our rhythm hand is resting. And then we can practice some strumming and we don't have to use our chord hand. We can maybe just lightly touch the strings and we give our chord hand a break, So that's a really good trick, especially once you start practicing for longer amounts of time. Either way, you did your practice session and now you're ready to put the guitar down. But before you finish your practice session, it's really helpful to do some cool down exercises. And the biggest revelation that I'd like to share from my interview with Emily is that guitar pulls your body forward. It tightens your chest, brings your arms in, leaning forward and, turning to look at your hands.
Some good exercises that would be pretty safe for most people would be things like just laying flat on your back after you've practiced and you've been in those positions where your neck's kind of getting twisted in one certain direction and everything's getting a little bit pinched and tightened in one way. And laying flat on your back on the floor, just letting everything relax, letting gravity help bring you into a better postural position. Doing some movements like wall angels or floor angels where you're basically laying on your back with your knees bent or standing against a wall with your knees bent and just bringing arms up over your head and back down is really good because we're opening up muscles, we're stretching muscles on the front like your pecs and your lats, and we're strengthening muscles on the back. Because in guitar, you're tending to get into this position where everything on the front's getting tight.
Hunching
and everything
over
on
the
back,
guitar.
Yeah, everything on the back's kind of getting overstretched and weak. So we want to think about strengthening the back muscles, stretching and opening up the front muscles.
I've been doing this a bit and it feels really good. Even if I'm on the computer editing videos for this channel or whatever, I'll just do that for a tiny bit, just lay on my back, and it helps out so much. I do have a ton more to share. For our interview, I literally compiled 8 years worth of questions that you and all the other good guitarists out there have sent me. And then I just kind of went through them, because a lot of people have been like, hey, I've been having a problem with my wrist and so on and so forth. So I just kind of went through it and you name it, we went over it. We also went over the most common problems that she has seen in guitarists and how to warm up and do these exercises in order to avoid those problems happening in the first place. So if you do want to go next level with this stuff and have a full routine where you can just follow along with some videos where I do all the stretches and exercises, as well as some self-massage and a bunch of specific stretches for the parts of your body that guitar affects the most. There's that guitar health kit. It's one of the bonus items that you get for free when you sign up for my course, Learn Guitar Once and For All. Otherwise, I hope these warm-ups and stretches help you avoid pain and tension so you can keep enjoying and having fun playing guitar. And if you want to keep learning guitar with me, if you haven't done so already, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. And if you have already subscribed, I do sincerely appreciate it. I thank you. Either way, have a fun time practicing, and I'll see you soon.